Hello and welcome, and you join me here for a 24-hour session in the middle of Shropshire on one of 𝗲𝗷𝗿 fisheries syndicate waters, the Sitch. So it's a 26-acre old estate lake in the heart of a pine forest that boasts an incredible stock of over 450 carp, 120 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗍𝗔s, 20 𝗏𝗍𝗍𝗍𝗔s, and an absolute monster over 50 pound at the right time of year. So we had a walk round this morning to try and find a nice peg. And a nice peg it is. We're on the boards on peg 17. Now I've not just chose it because it's a nice comfortable peg, although it is. We actually did see fish here this morning. We've seen a couple around the 100-yard mark, maybe a little bit further, but that's probably our limit out of this peg. We can't really go too far, it's going to encroach into other people's swims. So I've set my stall out 2 rods over 1 spot, and I've just gone for a light, easy approach of throwing sticking boilies over the top, just to try and get a quick bite. I don't want to cause too much disturbance because I did see a couple, like I say, and I think you've started spamming. I don't really want to spook them off. I'm not sure how the lake's fishing, and with me only having 24 hours, if I can just nick one and then progress the session from there, I think it'll work well. Now, as with all 𝗲𝗿 fisheries waters, it is an 𝗲𝗿 baits rule only. Now for me, it's always been the Simply Red. It's a firm favourite of mine, and that is what I'm using on this session. Like I said, I've started with 100 baits or so with a throwing stick. See how it goes from there, and then I'll probably introduce a few with a spom later on, dependent on what I see. So one thing I like to do when I'm boiler fishing is to pre-soak my boilies. Now I'll do that for 2 reasons. One, it gives it that sort of washed out look, like the bait's been there for a while, it looks a little bit more safer. And the second reason is this is a very silty lake, and the last thing I want to do is put fresh bait out straight out the bag and have it absorb all that silt, all that detritus, and soak into the boilies. I want them to be as fresh as possible. Now the way I go around doing it is I tend to use lake water where possible. So when I get to the venue, most of the time I put my boilies straight in a bucket, fill them up with a little bit of water, let them soak for a few hours. Once they've absorbed all that water, I take them out, let them dry for a little bit, put a bit of glug on, let the glug coat the outside of the boilies. I let it dry on there most of the time and let it set, give it a little bit of a casing, and then I'll put a little bit more on just before I spud out, so it's got as maximum attraction as possible. So it's later on in the day, it's not happened as of yet. We've seen fish in the area, all over the lake to be fair, not masses of them, but we have seen them and they're moving about, which tells me that there is a chance of them having a bit of a feed. Obviously they're burning energy while they're swimming around. I do think there's a chance, so I think the plan of attack is going to be, we're going to stick some bait out, 10 spods over the area. That bait's been soaking in the bucket now for the last few hours. It should be well absorbed. Yeah, it does. I'm still confident of a bite. I think it can happen. So we'll get some bait out. I'll redo the rods, put fresh up baits on for the night, and then we shall see what happens. So that's the bait out, 10 spoms over the spot, fairly tight. I don't like them too tight, I do like a little bit of a spread when I'm boiler fishing. I like the fish moving about. So the rod that I'm using is the 𝗃𝗶𝗆𝗿 marker rod in 13 foot. Very powerful blank, easily capable of putting spoms 100 yard. Capable of putting them a lot further in the right hands and the right technique, but for this, you know, for me personally, it's a real comfortable cast. Great for accuracy, and accuracy is very important obviously when it comes to spomming, because once that spom's out, your bait is going wherever that spom lands. So I like to be fairly accurate with it. Like I said, I don't mind a little bit of a spread, but it's got to be pretty accurate. The braid that I'm using is just a 25 pound braid, straight through. The spawn is the 𝗲𝗍𝗥 spawn with the float inside, so it floats if you was to have a crack off. 𝗲𝗶𝗱𝗿𝗄 reel, one of my favourite reels for spodding. So yeah, that's the setup. Perfectly complements the fishing rods that I'm using, which are the 𝗶𝗱𝗿𝗿 13-foots. So these are the Tracker 𝗶𝗱𝗿 13-foot 3 3/4 rods that I'm using on this session. Now we have just done a video recently on the 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲𝗍 page displaying the capabilities of these rods, what sort of ranges they can cast. Now they are powerful rods, great for casting a lead, but they're also great for playing fish as well. Now things I do like about them is the shrink handle with the flare, great for holding on with your left hand, gives you a great purchase on the rod when you're casting. The carbon's great quality, it's the Japanese Toray carbon, and my favourite aesthetics on the rod's got to be the Thai forged air guides. They really complement the blank. I do like the fact that they are the same guides on the spod rod as well as the fishing rod. Now with a bit of luck, hopefully I get to show you how good of a playing rod they are at some point through the rest of the session when, fingers crossed, we'll be bent into one of these big Sitch carp. Right, so that's it from me. Time to get that kettle on and some burgers. Most importantly, feed the cameraman. Temperature's dropped a little bit now, hence why the old bobble hats come out to play. So yeah, I will either see you later on tonight or I'll see you in the morning. Well, good morning. For a moment I thought the stars had aligned. I woke up to a blistering take on my left hand rod, burst out my bag, only to hit into a bird. Now unfortunately that can happen when you're fishing such a shallow lake. There was a lot of bird life on the lake, but I can take one positive from it, and is that I was fishing effectively. Now that's one thing I like to do when I'm fishing deep silty lakes, is fish a helicopter method. That's how I'm combating the deep silt. I made one slight tweak last night when I rechucked the rods. I moved my bead up a little bit, so it's about 8 inches from the lead. Now the reason I did that is yesterday there was a few birds on top of me and I didn't get picked up. So in my head I was thinking maybe I was a little bit too deep in the silt. So by moving that bead up a little bit more, giving me a couple more inches, I feel that my rig was more presentable, and it's obviously shown because I was picked up by that bird this morning. Now, had that bird have just picked it up and dropped it down, I probably would have left it because of the resetting properties of the way I fish. I like to have a stiff rig. I know it would have been presented after it had picked it up, but because it picked it up and took line, that was the reason I rechucked the rod. Right, so it's time for a swim change. I heard a few show in the middle of the night last night. I knew they were out there. I felt they were just a little bit further than the range we was fishing. And just to confirm that, I seen one show this morning, early doors, very central of the lake, in front of sort of peg 12, 13 area. So I've got on my toes early doors this morning, packed everything up, had a walk round, and it's looking good for it. I've seen another one show while I've been in the swim as well. So we're going to get set up. I'm going to stick a couple of singles out to start with. I'm going to play a little bit like I did yesterday, similar sort of method, start off with a very subtle approach. But what was a 24-hour session has turned into a 48-hour session. I can't leave it where it was. I feel like there's a chance of getting one. I've managed to swap a few things around and squeeze an extra night out of the session. So fingers crossed it will pay off. Right, so it's late afternoon and it still hasn't happened. There is fish over me. I don't know why it's not happened. Feels so good for a bite. The pressure's dropping ever so slightly. There is a bit of rain coming in. It could push him down. It could entice him to feed a little bit. I'm still going to put bait out. I still feel like it's the right time to put it out. I still feel like they're going to get on the bait. but I'm not going to put too much out. I'm going to make a little mix up now with the same Simply Red boilies that I was using. I'm just going to incorporate some pellet in the mix. So I'm just going to stick maybe 3 or 4 scoops of pellet. I'm not going to go crazy. I'll just go for 3. That should be enough. I don't want to make too much of a mix and have it left over in the bucket. When it comes to pellet, I like to use it all up so it doesn't go all sloppy in the bucket. So I'm probably going to put 8 spods out, providing they go accurate. I want 8 over my spot if I can help it. And then we'll see from there. It does feel really good for a bite, but this rain does look like it's coming in, so I'll best get it out quick. So it's finally happened. Just around 7 PM last night, the rod absolutely busted off, and oh my God, what an experience it was. Now, I'll be honest with you, to start with, I didn't think it was that big. I was just so excited to actually get a fish. I didn't really pay much attention to how big it was. It felt very tappy. I said to the cameraman, doesn't feel too big, I'm just super excited to catch one. And instantly it started kiting on a tight line towards me left, which got me worried a little bit. I was thinking it was going to go into the neighbouring swim next door, go through his lines, potentially wipe him out, and also potentially lose the fish. So I wasn't shy with it. I was giving it the beans, pulling it in, kept kiting all the way throughout the whole fight. As it maybe got 40 yards in, it was literally in the swim next door, in the margin, and I was terrified of losing it. Now, when the fish went in the net, I still didn't think too much of it. I just thought, I'm off the mark, we got a fish. I didn't care how big he was, I was absolutely made up. Had a little celebratory cuddle with the cameraman, popped my head back in the net, it looked a little bit bigger. When the cameraman had a look, it looked even bigger. And then I looked across its back and it was about 10 inches wide. And then we realised we had something special in the net. So we got things sorted, got it out, and my word, we was absolutely blown away. It finally happened. We got one of the big whackers out of this sitch we've been talking about throughout this whole session. If I'd have realised how big it actually was, I'd probably still be playing it now. Well, the move has paid off. I'm absolutely buzzing with this one. It's an enormous 44 pound on the nose. I'm so made up. It's difficult in front of the cameras, but to get one of this size, honestly, I'm over the moon. Let's get this one back. Oh. Look at the size of it. There she goes. 44 pound of an immaculate Sitch monster. Well, that's a wrap from me. I'm absolutely exhausted. What a session it's been. The pressure filming in front of the camera, trying to catch one, has took its toll. I'm ready for a bit of a break now. I just want to say a huge thank you to Rob and Harry for allowing us to fish such an amazing venue. I hope we did it justice, and if you do like this sort of content, be sure to tune in to the 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 YouTube channel next month, where you'll join me in session again at another one of the RH Fisheries Super Waters, the Mere.